Thanks for coming back. I know you've got a lot on your minds and a lot of things you need to get to. This is a busy week, and being ready for the first minute of the first meeting of the first class to be a good learning minute is the most important thing. But there are just a couple things I'll talk with you about this morning and move you on out. Again, I hope I can work through just a handful of things to bring you up to date on quickly and deal with any kinds of questions or things you want to raise with me, and then off to lunch. Okay? I realize we're a little vague about what time to come back, given where we're in the schedule, so thanks for making it back. Some didn't. I see down front a lot of people took their money and ran. So, okay. Booking flights, I guess. I have about 5 or 6 things. Whoops. Let's do it this way. Everyone's a little different. There we go. I have about 6 things I just want to mention to you to keep an eye on. Some of you are very involved in these. I'll only take a minute or two on each one, with the exception of one. I want to go in a little bit more depth. And if you have questions, you can talk to me or anybody else that you think might know what I'm talking about as time goes on. Feel free to email me, although that's about the only way you'll reach me for a little while, as I'll explain in a few minutes. So, first thing I wanted to talk to you about is just a quick little update on our work that we've titled Achieving the Dream. You remember that in the course of our work through the Strategic Learning Plan, we were focusing on very much on the front door. What happens to students who churn at the front door of the college without success? And we did some good work with large groups of people and came to the conclusion we needed to put a lot of emphasis on that work, that there were gaps to be closed in the performance of students who come to us with different kinds of preparation and from different neighborhoods and from different cultural experiences, and that we especially needed to focus for a period of time on the sequence of math courses where students very often find themselves trapped without success. And so just wanted to remind you of that work. It is still the very center of our learning-centered kind of journey together, and I don't want us to lose sight of that. You know, I get spread pretty thin building buildings and buying property and doing politics and all this stuff I never honestly cared to do. It just kind of comes with the job. But this is the work I get most passionate about because it's what matters the most. I don't care what building we're in. If students don't learn, what difference does it make? So continue to track that work, and you can see what we're working on. And here's sort of there's a lot of information in that graphic, and you can pull these down off the web later, so you don't have to master all the information. The point here really is that we're just into the second year of phase 1. We're at 06-07. We took that math sequence and did the math faculty have done some very, very good work on the curriculum that we've implemented and are bringing to scale supplemental learning. And you all remember what supplemental learning is? Good. I won't trash you with that. But it's a proven model that we said we're going to bring to scale. And so we moved from little pilot projects to a really big pilot project with lots of students involved. And we have a pretty aggressive model of evaluation, looking deep into the data. Now, how did we do? And what students succeeded, what students didn't succeed, and so on. And a lot of that's going to be shared with you later in other venues. I don't need to go into that. I'll touch on it for a second. But that's where we've started. Now you'll see towards the end of 06-07, ENC 1101, POS 2041, and MAC 1105 come into the picture. While we started with math, and math is very important to this really isn't just a math initiative. It's about all the experiences that students have at the front door and pulling those together. So we've got work to do there, and some of you will be involved in that. At the same time, we had some great work going on with linked courses, learning communities, and the SLS, or the Student Success course. What I can tell is that we will have record enrollment in the Student Success course as we plan to this fall. So it's a big job to meet that demand, but we believe it'll make a big difference for those students in all the courses they take now and in the future of the college. So good work going on there. Still at the middle of our work. It's where we put most of our discretionary dollars for new work in the college. Just continue to watch that and be a part of that. If you have any questions about that, we'll talk about it during the Q&A. I'm not going to do all that. Let's keep going. That's data. I'm not going to work you through all that. I think what I will tell you is that the early indications, there's still a lot of effort going into interpreting how some of this worked. The early indications on supplemental learning are that it was very beneficial to the students who participated in the services provided. Just enrolling in the class doesn't necessarily solve the problem. You have to participate in all the things that are supplemental. And in some classes, large numbers, a huge percentage of the students were very engaged in all that, and others, it was kind of 60-40. But the results are really clear that those who participated learned at a much higher level. Those who just kind of showed up and blew off the supplemental resources probably didn't. And so we're sorting through what that means and how to structure the classes and so on. Others who are closer to that work will talk to you about it another time. Hope I haven't misrepresented that data. That's what I understood from it. Second, we continue to pay a lot of attention to the question of evidence. Remember, we talked about evidence-based medicine as a kind of a model for what we're doing. That's a multi-year work. That's not a project you do in a year. So whether it's course-based, what you do from moment to moment in instruction using action research and classroom research tools, or it's discipline-based or sort of department-based where you're agreeing on learning outcomes and protocols for assessing them, or it's the metacognitive outcomes that the learning evidence team is paying a lot of attention to in our 4 core competencies and whether those are really acquired by students who experience our curriculum. At all of those levels, this work remains vital. I believe with all my heart that no college in America is going to get dramatically improved results with their students unless they step up to the assessment challenge the way you are. And we'll have to keep stepping up to it for some years. This is, again, long-term work, and I just appreciate the kind of leadership you're giving to it. There's some of the stuff that the learning evidence team is doing, and I would certainly direct you there. Where Kurt's here somewhere. Kurt Ewan, there he is. You want to stand up, take a bow. Take a bow. Yeah, Kurt's your contact person there. Third major area that I want you to be aware of is teacher education. Some of you are aware that we have a new program called the EPI, Educators Preparation Institutes. It's a way of providing a kind of a side door into certification for people who have a bachelor's degree or beyond in a discipline, want to teach, but aren't particularly fond of the idea of going to a school of education and earning teaching credentials for the public schools. And it's going to succeed here. It'll be a big program here. But it's just one response to a larger issue that I want you to understand. Since the 70s, we've had a terrible problem recruiting and retaining qualified people to teach in the K through 12 system. And it's been masked in many ways by changing the way that we certify people, by just really lying about who's qualified and who's not. By doing all sorts of things that mask the problem. But the problem is deep, it's structural, it's not going away, and now it's so pervasive that it just won't hide anymore. It can't be swept under the rug. I think there is some data here I'd like for you to see. We have some programs already. I mentioned EPI. We also had for several years the CORE program at Osceola, a wonderful program developed there in partnership with the school district that was designed to provide intensive education opportunities for people who are already employed at the Osceola School District, but not as teachers and wanted to be teachers. These are people who are vested in the community, invested in the schools, and for them, teaching is a dream come true. And so that program was developed and offered there with some real success. So we have some offerings. But here's, if you'll see that little seesaw, that's the way the problem presents in Florida. That this next year we'll hire over 30,000 new teachers to Florida schools. The schools of education will produce just over 5,000. Of the 5,000 they produce, only 2,500 will ever teach anywhere in the world in a formal teaching role. And of the 2,500 who do teach anywhere in the world, only about 1,200 will ever teach in Florida. So the supply line, the indigenous supply line in Florida, is producing 1/30th of the number of teachers that we need to produce, assuming they all stay. It's kind of scary, isn't it? You have your notions, I have my notions. There's good research on what's going on here. The problem is doing more of what we've been doing for 35 years while this problem, et cetera, doesn't solve the problem. It reminds me a lot of where we were in the 60s when healthcare exploded. And there were not nurses to serve the many, many, many beds and different kinds of environments that were being created at that time. At that time, the majority of nurses were trained in 3-year hospital-based diploma programs. Many of you nursing faculty remember those. Some of you graduated with your first RN credential from a diploma-based program. There was no way to scale that supply to meet the country's need. And the universities had other things on their mind. That's all I can really say about that. They had other things on their mind. The community colleges stepped up and said, we believe we can prepare professional nurses to a very high standard as registered nurses in what we'll call a 2-year program. It really is, for most, a 3-year program, if they're attending even close to full time. But we think we can do it, and the healthcare industry was divided. The profession said, no, you can't. They won't be fully educated nurses. The hospital said, we'll take any help you can give us. And so RN programs were started in the early 60s. Within 10 years, 2/3 of all RNs were being produced by community colleges, and the supply of RNs had nearly tripled. It was a big structural move, kind of a tectonic move in the way that that profession was supplied to the healthcare industry. I think that's what's happening in teacher education right now. We've had 30 years of universities unable to address the issue, and we're going to have to step up. It's the largest profession in America. There are more professional teachers than any other profession you can name, and it's in crisis. And we have to do something about it. So think about it. Some of you will write grants about this. Some of you will invent new ways of doing this. Many of you will join us in forming new partnerships with other kinds of institutions. We're going to go online and offline and underground and behind the door and whatever else we have to do, because the problem has to be solved. Okay? So that's the third thing I wanted to mention. Here's the fourth thing. It's really time for Valencia to step up to an international studies program again. We had a pretty vital program in the 80s. It withered in the late 90s. By the time I arrived, there was just a few people traveling, mostly, I think. And we stepped back from it and said, let's take a breath, focus on some other things, and come back. And now it's time. So about 3 years ago, we began talking about the importance of a global curriculum and an international perspective and an international community of learners and all those kinds of things. The board is behind this. Just this past year, we felt like we'd gotten to the point where we could begin to put it on our work priorities. And so we've done that, and we've asked Ann Puyana to take the leadership in this. And this, what you're about to see, is her work. So here's an emerging vision that she's developing in communication with many of you about Valencia's future in international studies. And it has several parts, all of which are important, but not all happen at the same time and at the same speed. I think it would be fair to say that the early focus is going to be on international students, and already is, and some work has already begun to recruit more, to make it easier for them to find Valencia and matriculate here, and once they're here, to have a richer and more engaged experience with one another, with us, for their benefit and for the benefit of all the rest of the learning community, to be more intentional about that. So that's the student focus. The numbers of students nationwide coming from other countries to attend higher education in America has historically been immense, but it suffered greatly after 9/11. We lost about half or more of our international enrollment. Many other colleges did as well, but there's signs that that's turning now, that people are returning to that path. We have a lot of competition. While we stepped back from international learning in America, Australia and Britain and Ireland and lots of other places stepped up. And so there's lots more international learning now in other countries than there was even 10 years ago. So we're going to step back in. So the next thing you'll see, kind of going around this, I think we'll go counterclockwise is probably the right order. Anne, wherever you are. There she is. Is that probably the right way to go? Okay. So come here. We begin with the students. We're also beginning with faculty and staff opportunities. So we want to provide, many of you already do some of this. You do this because you're clever and committed to it and you know how. We'd like to make it easier and more supported for more faculty to participate in travel and study abroad. That's why you heard some of that in the way that the chairs were awarded. It's one of the things we want to do through your sabbaticals, and you heard a little bit of that on the sabbatical side, but other things as well. We'd like to do teacher exchanges within the country and between countries so that you actually teach in institutions that are very different from ours with students who are very different from ours and bring that intelligence back to us. And we'd like to do lots more student group leadership. Some of you already take small groups of students for very powerful learning experiences in other places like Belize or we were just talking about taking a group to Texas here in a year or two. Things like that are going on quietly. I live there. I'm telling you, it's not America. Especially West Texas. Anyway, supporting your work more in that, so we're trying to develop some infrastructure. Imagine what that looks like so that the approach is thoughtful, your deans are engaged, they don't get too surprised by what's going on, so they can support it. You get help with managing the logistics of that. Your students are covered by insurance. It's really clear what they're committing to. There's academic standards associated with it and so on. So all that sort of stuff is going to be in the works. And third would be the U.S. student opportunities for our students to do exchanges, to go overseas and study and so on. A lot of that's in place. We just haven't really connected to the pipeline. So we have some institution-to-institution relationship building to do there. And last is the related work. In many ways, the related work is the main work. Everything else kind of helps us get to the related work. But at the end of the day, what we want is for all of our students to experience a more global perspective in our curriculum. And so you'll see in the related work where that comes from. So watch for that. Many of you I know have a lot of enthusiasm for this work, and Anne's looking for team members for this work. So stay with us on that. It'll take a couple of years to develop and probably 5 to 7 years to hit full stride. But it'd be nice if we had the vision clearly articulated within a year or so and the beginnings of implementation within the next 2 years. Some of you are aware that we have begun to develop a different kind of relationship with the University of Central Florida, and I want to walk, this is the one I want to spend the most time on. This is important. It's all important, but something's happening that most of our state doesn't quite get yet. And we tried to explain it to them and show them the data, but people are so busy just dealing with the next thing that sometimes getting them to think 20 years ahead or 10 years ahead is difficult. And that's certainly true in educational policy in Florida. So let me walk you through this little graph. Dr. Green, Thomas Green, and I worked on this project in the spring, and we said nobody in Florida is looking out at what kind of enrollment demand higher education is going to experience. No one is. In fact, there's no one really doing policy work in higher education in Florida yet. There are people talking about beginning to think that way as they've created this new or rejuvenated Board of Regents, Board of Governors, or whatever they call themselves now. But the truth is, it's all politics. Everything at the state level that sort of governs what we do is purely political, without much policy. So we thought maybe we could help suffuse a little bit of policy into the political conversation. And we began with this issue and said, how are we going to grow? So this graph represents a lot of research that models what enrollment demand might look like. And what we mean by enrollment demand is demand for freshman seats. And if you took the way that most of the researchers in Florida have done this, you would just take that bottom baseline growth number, and you'd look from 2004 to 2014, a 10-year horizon. you'd see something like 24% growth over 10 years. It's not exactly 2.4 per year, is it? It kind of varies and compounds and so on. But at the end of 10 years, you'd look back and say there are 24% more people seeking a freshman seat. That's based on ordinary growth analysis, population analysis. Right? And it's an underestimate. It always has been. It always will be. Florida just can't quite figure out that we always grow faster than the demographers say we will. It's a money thing. Okay? But we take the conservative number. If, however, you factor in even a conservative estimate, a conservative extension of the improvement in the high school graduation rate we have already been experiencing, if you half that rate of improvement and add that to the curve, you get the second curve. Another 21% over 10 years, so that's 43%. See, the high school reforms are working. You wouldn't know it in Orange County. Orange County is so busy beating itself up for its education system, it can't even look at its own data. But the truth is, statewide, high school graduation rates are improving at the rate of about 2% a year. And one of the reasons I can't talk about it is because they haven't really told us the truth about how low it was. Okay, there's ways of managing the numbers so it looks like you've got a 3 or 4% dropout rate, but that's an annualized by grade dropout rate. If you look at the whole number and say, okay, what percent of those who were there in the 9th grade don't graduate, you get the stark truth, and it's like 40%. Okay, so, but it's been improving. And nobody's planned for that. People are going to graduate more and more students, and nobody said, gee, I wonder if any of them want to go to college. Okay? On top of that, however, the post-secondary continuation rate, that is, the percentage of students who, after graduating from high school, choose to go on to some post-secondary education, has improved even faster. And if you add that on, now we're looking at, and this, by the way, I believe uses half of the growth factor from that. In other words, we took the rate of growth in post-secondary continuation over the past several years and said, what if it continues at only half that rate of improvement? And that produced this number. So we think these are conservative numbers. That shows an 87% increase in demand for freshman seats over 10 years. Okay? You with me so far? Nobody's planning for this. Okay? It's just gotten traction, but for political reasons. We presented this to a group called the Access Task Force that had the chairman of the university's Board of Regents and the chairman of the Board of Education, a bunch of other people there. They were mostly the two sort of big water buffalo in the pond there. Everybody else was just frogs. But we made the presentation to them, and the university interest said, no, absolutely not. We have alternate data that says over the next 10 years there will only be a 12% increase. Okay? Because politically they were concerned about the baccalaureate issue. As soon as that group had folded and said, we give up, the university came out with new numbers that said we're going to have, I think they said, 135,000 more students to serve in a decade. What we need, they said, is 2.5 more University of Floridas. Okay? It's a political statement. It's easy to understand. Pretty expensive solution to the problem. And it's the wrong solution. And the reason it's the wrong solution is the new students, the net new students, aren't like the old students, are they? Those who are graduating now, who wouldn't have graduated before, are the net new students. Those who are choosing to go to college now, who would have chosen not to go to college before, they're the new students. That's where the growth is. The growth of the traditional student populations in the baseline. The growth of the non-traditional, which is, 3 times as much, is in non-traditional, that's up in the other two curves. What do they look like? Well, they're first-generation high school graduates, certainly first-generation college attendees. They all work. They have family responsibilities. They may not easily relocate to go to school someplace else, especially someplace that has no jobs to offer them, like West Florida or Florida Gulf Coast University or Ocala, where they're talking about building a new university, okay, because that's where the chairman of the Board of Regents lives. Okay. You see how this works? So this political thing's going, and we're saying, by God, we're going to fight the politics with truth, data, and the American way. And they're just flattening us, right, so far. But this is the issue. In other words, community colleges will bear this burden. This is our job. Now, that growth is statewide. Guess what? It's not really in every county, is it? We still have counties losing population in North Florida. In other words, that growth is going to be concentrated into 2 or 3 growth areas, one of which is Central Florida, from St. Pete to Sanford, really. We might include Daytona Beach in it, maybe. That's up in the air. Not Jacksonville. The other growth area is the southeast coast of Florida, and it's running up the coast as they run. They move, they grow in that part of Florida. They grow west until they hit the swamps, and when 2 or 3 people have been eaten by alligators, they say, "Let's go north a little bit." Okay? That's what's going on. So up the sort of Indian River corridor is going to grow like mad. Those are the 2 areas. If you're going to build new institutions, that's where you build them. Anybody want to see them build some new universities in Central Florida? Does that make sense to you? Yeah. It's an interesting idea. Here's the early indicator of the growth pressure on us. It's felt at UCF first and then here. And you saw it in the paper a couple of days ago, didn't you? Did you read that? Over the past 7 years, the acceptance rate of freshman applicants to the University of Central Florida has gone, actually over the last 10 years, it's gone from 83%, which is open door. That's an open door number. If you apply and you have a high school graduate, you're gonna get in. That's the way it was 10 years ago. Today, 46%. That's a lower acceptance rate than the University of Florida last year. And the University of Florida is lowering theirs too. They're actually reducing the size of their freshman class in the face of this dramatic need the state has. We're now 1160 or 1180 average SAT, like Purdue. And you change what you call your operational peer institutions and your aspirational peer institutions, and you decide who you want to be like. So, and UCF is in the process of going from peer institution to, say, UNC Charlotte, to peer institution North Carolina State University. That's the direction they're going, for good reasons. It's good for the community for them to do that. It's not a bad thing. My snide comments notwithstanding. Just like to have fun. But there's a consequence, and the consequence is the loss of local access. UCF now admits more students from Broward County as freshmen than from Orange County. Yeah. They have the second largest dorm population in Florida, next to the University of Florida. Remember when they were what did they call themselves, or the press called them, a commuter school on steroids? Remember that? Not anymore. Not anymore. They are now a residential metropolitan university. That's who they wanted to be, and that's who they're becoming. And it's going to continue, which means many of your children and mine, and I have many, will have good academic records and not be able to attend University of Central Florida. Who'd have thunk it? Okay? Well, there's an opportunity and a responsibility for us. So that assessment of our situation led us to the conversation with UCF, where we basically said, look, everybody's asking me, including UCF, if and when we're going to add bachelor's degrees. Because you could use this data to justify that. And so in a meeting with Dr. Hitt, I said, we need to answer that question. And we need to make it a pretty clear answer. And there are lots of ways to get to an answer. Most of the community colleges who are in this are answering it on the basis of institutional ego or even presidential ego. I mean, they call me and say, Sandy, you got to get in on this. We're a real college now. This is a tiny little college in the Panhandle. And I said, well, bless your heart. I'm sorry you wasted all the previous 25 years of your career in a place that wasn't a real college. Okay? The way to answer the question, what do we do, isn't to say what makes us feel better about ourselves. If you don't feel like a real college, then find another job. Okay? Bless your heart. This is a real deal here. The way to ask the question is, what do we want our students to experience? And adding 4 or 5 bachelor's degrees in areas where nobody wants to major anyway doesn't really help, does it? So that's when we said, if we have to go that route, we will, because we are responsible for local access, but we'd rather not. And Dr. Hitt said, what would you rather do? We said, well, we would like for our graduates to be guaranteed admission. When you're turning down everybody else under the sun, when our graduates to be guaranteed admission as a junior tier institution. Second, we want them to compete for the selective upper division programs as though they were native students. We want that selection to be blind. So the selection committee treats a GPA at Valencia the same as a GPA at UCF. It's all the same. And if that means you have to turn down transfer students from out of our area, then you should. So you're going to give us preferential treatment over transfers from any other institution. And you're going to give us even treatment with your native students. And third, we want to have as many as 60 or 70 bachelor's degrees that can be earned on our campuses in partnership with you and others if necessary. And he agreed to all of it. And, yeah, and and he agreed for the right reasons. He really cares about local access. He cares. So, at the top of their political priority list this year, and the top of ours as well, is the creation of the first really large joint-use university center facility, which we hope will be funded for West Campus in this next legislative session. It's a physical expression of the commitment, but the real goal is to graduate 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 people with bachelor's degrees from that campus in choice majors like engineering, in business and accounting, and so on. We're also in discussion, this is not a decision yet, but a discussion about them bringing some additional resources to Osceola when we build Building 4, which is a kind of a combination library, cafe, bookstore, student commons, Barnes and Nobles. I don't know what it is. It's a thing like that, but big. And they might bring, say, as much as $5 million to that project, and will dedicate classroom space in that building for more bachelor's degrees. Okay? And then we'll see what else we're doing. Lots and lots of other details to this. Today you don't need to hear them. But I need you to know this is huge for our future. Okay? And they're both challenges and opportunities in it. Opportunities look like this. For the first time ever, this summer, when they'd done their applicant screening and were notifying people who had applied to go to UCF and were not going to be accepted, they sent them all a letter. And the letter said, we can't help you now, but if you'll go to Valencia, Seminole, Brevard, or Lake Sumter, so we pulled our neighbors into this project as a regional thing. If you'll attend one of them, you're guaranteed admission, and we'd love to have you do that. They sent 14,000 letters that way, I think. Right? Isn't that interesting? That would never have happened before. So there's real opportunity in it, and we'll begin seeing those students. You'll see some of them right away. Okay? But that's going to grow. One of the problems we're going to face, one of the challenges, is that the pressure on us to accommodate a lot of freshmen who are relatively able academically, okay? Which is a blessing too. That's great. We love them. But the pressure will be to make sure our program mix, our balance of programs stays intentional, that we don't just get washed over by a wave of AA students and forget that we have other missions to balance with it in technology, in healthcare, in other kinds of workforce training, in developmental education, and so on. We still have to keep healthy commitments in all of those areas of our mission. So we're going to have to sort that through as we go forward. So we have some really interesting questions to wrestle with. Okay? And this will touch the new campuses that we're developing, and we can talk about that in Q&A if you want to, but I don't really have a slide for it. So that's what this is about. It's not just another written document with UCF. It's a profound change in how we're going to serve local people. And it's going to challenge and bless the institution in some really interesting ways. It's a big deal. Let's just go on. Poor Thomas prepares these wonderful slides, and I don't use them. I left out deep relationships in coordinated advising. They'll be assigning full-time people to our campuses to do that. And joint philanthropy. We'll be raising dollars to support students through that pipeline together. Yeah, you can read that. Okay. Just a moment on this. Some of the best work I saw you do 4 or 5 years ago was the development of the strategic learning plan. It was exciting. It was focused. We came out with a very ambitious agenda, 67 action items. About 55 of those have been completed. 2 or 3 have been retired due to lack of interest. And 2 or 3 are still very much underway. But it's time to rethink. That plan was intended to have a 3 to 5 year life. We're in year 6 now, almost to begin year 7, and it's still good work. And I'm not suggesting that we know there's a radical change in our direction, but it's time to step back again. So we've asked the College Planning Council to take charge of fashioning a process for us to renew our strategic plan. Go to the next slide. There you go. And here's the kinds of things it will touch. I hope those of you who've been here through that process know now that that's not an exercise in paper shuffling. Our budgets have been built right out of that plan. We've spent many millions of dollars on the priorities identified in the strategic planning process. We've staffed to it. We've been capital funding to it. All the resource allocation is guided by that. It is serious work. Okay? Strategy matters. So here are the kinds of things that will come out of that, including really the core of our next round of Dancing with the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, you'll see. And we have a process that's been formed now. It's really important, as complex as this gets, to make it simple to do. The conversations are complicated, but the process ought to be really clear and simple. So what we have is a series of steps that we will take. They've been calendared. You see how that works? Is that readable to even people my age and back? Okay. I had the surgery. Yes. So the next stage of this really is beginning the conversation. What's great about making strategy is it's a dialectic. It's like teaching and learning. You sit around together and entertain hypotheses about what's real and what's coming and where we ought to be in it. And you argue it through with evidence and passion and all those things. So this fall, that conversation will be on the top of our agenda. And there will be some vehicles for doing that, some sort of technologies of collaboration, like the really big meetings, like using flashlight surveys, like all those kinds of things that we've done before to nourish that collaboration. By March, we'll be settling in on what are the strategic issues that we're going to focus the next 5 to 8 years on, and what should our goals be, and what are going to be the main elements of that strategy. And then that gets reduced into objectives and so on. The projects that flow out of that, the real work planning, comes after the board has approved the big strategy. But this year will set the strategy for years to come. You need to be engaged in this. This matters. And this will decide where we spend our money, how we staff, where we build our buildings, what programs we're going to grow and what programs we're going to diminish. All those kinds of things will come out of this. Where we're going to write our grants and for what, where we're going to spend our discretionary dollars from the foundation, everything. And it's very invigorating. One of the things that I feel most pleased about over the past several years is that the elements of that first strategic learning plan are now a part of our culture. I mean, I'll be having a conversation with some of you, and somebody will say, well, we used start right principles to design this thing. That was a goal in the plan. Language was invented in the strategic planning process. It's good work. And there's a structure of leadership there, and you'll get more directly from the College Planning Council about all this. This just sort of lays out some definition of roles. The Planning Council is responsible for shepherding the process, not for writing the plan. Okay? You are responsible for generating all the conversation that ultimately a planning committee drafts into documents. Okay? And it's a complicated diagram because collaboration is that way. That's hi, Mike. Good-looking guy. That's the things, the 5 or 6 things I want to make sure we touched on today from my end that I'm going to need your help with and that we're going to be doing together. It's almost noon, and some of you have appointments. We'll take a couple of minutes for Q&A if you want to and see how that goes, but I won't keep you long because you've got other things to do. What's on your mind? Yes? Is that good or bad? What you wish more had an education background? When are you going to run? Well, I hope that's a long way off, but okay. The question, we're back on the teacher shortages in the K-12 system that we're talking about. Can you correlate that to salaries? In a way, you can. Here's what I know about it. That the structural change came in the 60s to early 70s when women who had hit many barriers into other professions began to overcome those barriers. And so you had this sort of captive talent pool in teaching and nursing. And now they could go almost anywhere. And so without that captive talent pool, we were back in kind of an open market situation, recruiting people to both nursing and education, but especially in teaching. And the results were really scary. The research I know about it says it's not just pay, it's structure of career and profession. How many of you taught in the public schools? I don't need to tell you this. Okay, we just spent a morning celebrating together the kind of what makes you a professional, the discretion you have, the learning opportunities you have, the leadership that you exert every day. Did you, as a public school teacher, feel like a leader of the curriculum? No. I mean, it's deeper than just money. It's about the whole structure of the organizations and the way people are treated in schools. And if you've taught in them recently, there are new issues, and that's the way students treat you. So it's a tough place to work. So there are larger issues there. I appreciate you raising them. Some of those we can help with, some we can't. Another question? Yes. Yes, we're in negotiation. Let me tell you where we are. The property we identified and have been in negotiation about for a year now is called Moss Park Landing. Thank you, Keith. Moss Park Landing, and it's on a piece of road, the Wee Wahootie Road. You remember that? I got a good laugh last year. That piece of property, we've decided, cannot support a regional campus. And the negotiation was difficult because it involved a land swap for some of the frontage over on Kirkman. So the first thing we did was say, no, let's take our land off the table. The land swap's off the table. We lease that land. We may trade that land for something else. We may not. It's off the table. So we'll come back to that another time. So then we just focused in on the campus, and we decided you can't put a 15,000 student or 14,000 student campus on that property. It won't work. So we have a couple of alternatives. One was to go back and look for another footprint that would hold that kind of a campus and handle its traffic and so forth. But for a variety of reasons, we've been moving over the past 6 months towards probably a different model, which we're calling area campuses. An area campus would be about 5,000 students in maybe 150,000 gross square feet of space on maybe 15 acres. It's easier to build them green. It's easier to locate them because you don't have all the concurrency issues, the traffic management issues that the county holds your feet to the fire about. It works in an environment where gasoline is $4 or $5 a gallon, better than traveling a long distance to big campuses. It can complement the big regional campuses, so you have area campuses that run the general program and 1 or 2 specialty programs, but if you want the full range of specialty programs, you have to go to one of the regional campuses to finish your program. And there are just a lot of advantages we're seeing to them. There's some disadvantages too, and we're evaluating those. An area campus would look like Osceola looked just before Building 3 was built, but with less land. Okay, about the same population, about the same kind of parking, about the same kind of building configuration, but before Building 3 was built. Okay, and they're pretty efficient. We can afford to do those. They've reached the economies of scale and management at that level, so that you're not really replicating costs, overhead costs, at a very high level. So it works financially for us. So we're evaluating that. If we go that direction, then we might have 2 or 3 campuses that serve the Southeast region. One would be up closer to east to relieve some of the pressure here long term. One might be right in the heart of that Moss Park, Narcousie Road, east side of the airport. And the third might be, I don't know yet, maybe Poinciana. So we'll spread it out a little bit more. Maybe, far side of St. Cloud someday. So we're evaluating that. We're looking at a lot of different properties. We'll see. Southwest, on the other hand, is essentially done. The Southwest campus, the property actually becomes ours probably in October or November, but the deal is done, and the money's there, and it's just dotting the I's and crossing the T's now. And our plan has been a regional campus there. Depending on where we go in Southeast, we may back up and reevaluate that and say, no, what we need out there is some kind of an area campus, and that means there's a lot of land that we can leave green, and a lot of land that we could partner with the YMCA or Child Development Center or, the county library to make joint use of. Okay. Wendy, did you have a question too? That was it? Okay. No, just Osmost over there. Okay. There are 2 questions. The first was, how did the medical school play into our discussion about guaranteed transfer of our graduates? And it doesn't for 2 reasons at this stage. One is that's a graduate professional program, and so you really be talking to people who earn bachelor's degrees, and those would be UCF bachelor's degrees and how they might matriculate in. And the second is they're so far away from even knowing what that program looks like. It's like they had so much success so quickly that they can't catch up with themselves. They are very interested in our allied health programs and how they relate to their program in the long term, but they're not far enough along to have that conversation. Their use of clinical facilities as a medical school will be very different from ours in allied health curricula, but there could be issues there we need to work through. Right now, the largest clinical education user other than nursing programs, ours and others in the area, and ours is by far the largest, is medical education at ORHS, the Orlando Regional Healthcare System, where there are, I think, 55 residents right now, medical residents. There is a medical school in town now run by Florida State University. There is a community-based medical education model, and so they have a cohort of 2nd and 3rd year students in med school who live and learn in Orlando. They've asked to come on our campus, and I've told them we love them and all that, but we're busy right now. And they have the money to lease office space. It's really not, there's not much of an educational facility. They're in the hospitals all the time. But who knows? Someday we might provide a little home for them. But that's all. That's what I know about that. I think we'll have more conversation. Right about now, somebody's finding out that the Burnham Institute's coming to their town, and somebody's finding out that it isn't. I don't know if you've been following that. Burnham Institute is a biotechnology and biological research organization. It's kind of a huge, big deal and not such a big deal. I mean, in a way, it's one of those straws that has to fall. I mean, it's a linchpin, let me use a different metaphor, for moving us towards an innovation economy in a town that really doesn't have a lot of assets. So it's important. In the way that, say, IBM was important when the Research Triangle lured them to come build those big IBM 360 mainframe computers there in 1970. Before that time, the Research Triangle was mostly just raw land. From 1957 until 1970, it was a joke. And then IBM came and things started to take off. Many hope that Burnham will be like that for us. On the other hand, it's only a $90 million institution. Our operating budget's way bigger than theirs. So their economic impact in any immediate sense is modest. But somebody's finding out whether they're coming to them, and they are very interested in us. So if the announcement says, yes, we're coming to Orlando, then our health sciences and biology and micro and chemistry and other faculty will be asked to get together, and we'll be talking about what kinds of programs we'll mount in support of that industry. Biotechnology, technician level programs, for example. But I didn't feel like it was worth stirring everybody up until the buffalo hunt had ended and somebody had the hide on the wall. Okay? Yes? His question is, he thought the universities took all of our students. On paper, the university has an agreement that says community college graduates are guaranteed admission to the university's system. But it doesn't do our local students any good to be accepted to West Florida or Florida Gulf Coast, or for most of them, Florida Atlantic, which is where they have capacity. They have lots of capacity in those three institutions. They don't have any capacity at Florida State, University of Florida, UCF, and USF, which is where more of our students like to go. So the answer is we have had many transfers just in the last 2 or 3 years seeking admission who've gotten a little different treatment. But the more important issue is that they signal to our local community, if you want to earn a bachelor's degree here, there's a guaranteed path for you. What faculty will be staffing the upper division classes for UCF? We're not far enough along in the big planning to know what that'll look like in 5 or 6 years. But we've talked a lot about sort of blurring the boundaries some. The enrollment in their programs on West and Osceola is already growing pretty significantly. It's moving right along. I don't know if any of our folks are teaching as adjunct for them yet or not. Probably some are. This makes your deans really, really nervous. Okay, I want you to have the opportunity to do that from time to time. I think it'd be good for us to share faculty and for you to teach, particularly if you're in an area where there's not a lot of different courses to teach. So many of our English faculty, for example, would love to have the chance to teach that 14th century English mystics course that they designed 10 years ago, but nobody's ever enrolled for. Good. I'd love for you to be able to do that. But I'm not sure yet how all that's going to work. We are working on the other end to try to figure out a way to hire some of their doctoral students and prepare them to be teachers, so that they would do things like teaching in a learning college and have the kind of teaching support that you have and learn the craft while they're graduate students, while they're doctoral students, and teach for us like adjuncts. And if it works the right way, they would actually be offered teaching fellowships by UCF when they're recruited, but their assignment would be to teach for us. And again, I think we'd learn their craft faster and better here than they would there. So all that's kind of up for grabs. We'll figure it out. One more. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not in Tallahassee, thank God. I'm going away for 6 weeks. Oxford University asked me to come as a visiting scholar this year, and I told them I couldn't come for a year. So they asked if I could come for as much as 6 weeks at a time over the next 3 years. And I told them I might be able to do that, but I had to check with our board of trustees. And so the board said, yeah, we'll give you X number of days of study leave, and you can go once a year for the next 3 years and do this Oxford gig. So I will be there. I'm leaving Sunday, and we'll be back October 5th, I think. And my job is to give some lectures and write a book. And try not to get too lonesome, because I'm all alone over there. It's just me. The family can't come and probably shouldn't if I'm going to get it done. So that's why. I'll be in touch by email. I figured if I sent 2 emails out, you wouldn't know whether I was gone or here anyway. And, I promise I'll miss you more than you'll miss me. But that's what it's for, and it's come just at the right time in my life to get some work done that I've wanted to do for a long time, and I need to get it out. The plan, I don't know if I can fulfill their expectations or not. The plan is a book a year. And so this first book is something I've had in the works. The next one, I've been doing speeches on the topic, but I haven't really outlined a book for it yet. It's on postmodern students. And the third, I think, is a book of poetry. So we'll see what happens. Thanks. And I hope, like these folks here and those of you who are on sabbaticals, that all of you have lots and lots of opportunities just like this to do the work of your heart, and that will nourish your work back here as well. You have time for one story? That'd be okay, and then let you go. I've been telling this story, just told it twice so far, but to Valencia people, so 1 or 2 of you may have heard this before. I don't know why I want to tell it to you. It doesn't really relate to anything, but I just feel like I want to tell this story to you. It's a true story. It's about my son, Curtis, who's 6. Kurt, he's great fun right now, as some of y'all know. He thinks Gustavo Morales, whom he calls Ex-Stavo, is a grandfather, and he is. He's just not his. But he's really energetic right now, a great deal of fun, and he was so attached to his mother the first 3 years, I could hardly get his attention, but now I can't peel him off. It's just great. He's with me every minute when I'm in the house, and so we're having a good time. So he decides, among his many other interests, he wants to learn karate this year and goes to karate class. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen 6-year-olds in karate class. This is really a hoot. He goes to karate class at some strip center over off McGuire in Coy, and his sensei, his teacher, is named, believe it or not, Barbie. Now, she doesn't look like Barbie. She looks like Vince Carter. Remember Sergeant Carter? She is tough as nails. She hollers at the kids with a voice like this, and they love her. I mean, she just screams and yells and carries on, and then they all hug her. And I don't know what that's about. But he's in the class, and it's him and a bunch of other little boys and girls. And they're different belts. These are the younger kids. So he has his white belt starting out. Well, he reaches the point where he's got to earn his advanced white belt. It has a little yellow stripe in the middle of it. Okay? So to earn that, he has to be tested. He and 4 other little boys. And the test is it's great. It's a great assessment of learning. I loved going to this thing. And I love taking him to class because she's a good teacher. She couldn't explain what she's doing to you, but you could explain it to her. She's good. So he has to do this test. The first thing is she speaks commands in Japanese. He has to recognize them and convert them into actions. So the words like hachidachi is where you stand. He loves that one. And there's a whole bunch of those, front stance, side, horse stance, but it's all in Japanese. He's doing those things. He's doing great. All the kids are doing it. He's worked hard. He has to recite 10 of the 30 principles of karate. There is no first attack in karate. Karate is good for justice. Karate, all these things. My wife knows them all. She should get a belt. Then they do what they call a kata. And then the kata, it's a string of moves put together, like choreographed. And they throw punches and blocks. And he does this just perfectly. And you got to understand, all the parents of these 4 children are there, video cameras and still cameras. And so we're all there. And Jane's there, and I'm there, and Kate, our 20-year-old's there. Now, Kate helped raise these children. They think of her like a surrogate mother. She's just a neat kid. And she's all over it too. Then they get to the last stage, and they have to break a board. They have to break a board. I didn't know this was coming. He's only 6. His little arms look like spaghetti. So they bring out the big blocks, and they put this, it's 1 inch, it's a 12-inch board, but it's only 1 inch thick, so it's like a shelving board. They put it out there. And I've never seen him practice anything like this before. Got to break the board. This is the moment where you really film everything. I got a great picture of this. And they put the belt under the board, and you break the board and grab the belt. Get it? And breaking the board, they go down on one knee. He's breaking it with the heel of the hand. The next one they break with a knife hand, but this one's with a fist. And they go down on one knee and wham! And the trick is to hit through the board. You don't hit at the board, apparently. And she's reminding them all this. And the first boy goes. He's the biggest boy in the class. We all know he'll break it. And sure enough, first swing, whack, board breaks. Nobody's more surprised than he is, you know. He's all excited, and he goes back to his seat, and his parents are all over it. Oh, I got it on film. It's great, it's great. Then they call on Kurt. I'm so nervous. And I look over at Jane and Kate, and they're way more nervous than I am. So we're watching. She gives him this pep talk. Now, here's how you do it. Tighten up that fist. She's talking in his ear, and she's saying stuff like, do you want it? Do you really want it? You're going to get it? You know, Shotokan, Tiger, and all that stuff. I don't know. And they get, finally, she says, okay, go. And he swings, and I watch him. At the last minute, he pulls his punch, and he hits at the board, and bump. Hurts his hand, but doesn't break the board. Oh. As a parent watching this, you know what this feels like. It's like, oh, God. It didn't break. I look over at Jane, and there's tears. It's terrible. She says, it's okay, Barbie says. Come here, let me talk to you. She talks to him again, gets his fist tight, talks him through it, shows him you got to hit through the board, runs him through it again. Last minute, he pulls the punch and misses. She says, go sit down. Take your board. Oh. He covers his eyes. He's on his knees. He's bending over. Oh, God. And Jane's dying 1,000 deaths. Because we've just been praying for God to strike that board with a thunderbolt. It's horrible. And let's see what happened. Then his little friend down the street, who was right across the street and down 2 doors. So he's his best friend, but also his rival, you know, that works with boys. He's up next, and he's a little tiny guy. I mean, spaghettini arms. I mean, just. You know. And he breaks it. First try. And I was happy for him. But then he turned around the curtain and went. Kurt was mad now. He wasn't just sad, he was mad. And he's holding that board and hitting it. And again, I don't know if he's getting another chance or whatever. Jane's dying over there. And finally, Barbie calls him back after all the boys have broken their boards and said, I think there's something wrong with this board. And tosses and gives him a new one and says, give it one more go. And the third time he breaks it. Ah, such a relief. And she saved his face. You know, on the way home, he's saying, you know, Dad, there's something wrong with that first board. Yeah, I think there was, yeah. All right. Here's what I wrote in my journal that night. This is what I want you to hear. And I don't know why. Here's what I wrote in my journal. I wrote, I never loved him more than in the moment of his failure. I didn't want him to break the board out of pride. Just for himself, I needed him to, right? I never loved him more than in the moment of his failure. And I thought, all this time, I thought I knew what grace meant, and I didn't. And now I know. And I wonder what that means in a classroom. And I'll just leave it like that. Have a wonderful semester.